Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Thomas from Genetech. We'll be starting the webinar shortly. We've still got folks coming in. Couple of housekeeping notes right off the top. We know that you're probably going to have questions. If you look on your webinar console to the right, you'll see a tab. So go ahead and enter your questions in. And when we get to the end of our presentation, then we will be taking the questions from the audience and answering those for you. Looks like folks are still coming in, so we'll probably start here in about 2 minutes. We hope all of you that have joined so far are having good weather out there. We're having a few weather-related issues where I'm at. So if we go away, please stick with the webinar. I think everyone's Outlook calendar is giving them the reminder because I still see people streaming in. All right, so we'll go ahead and get kicked off. I'd like to let everybody know again, if you have questions, please enter them in the question console at the bottom of your applet on the right. Let everyone know that this session is being recorded, and first off, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webinar and panel discussion on the benefits of having a strategic or security operations center. So first thing I'd like to do is I would like to introduce today's panelists. So first off, we have Ross Armstrong. Ross is the Vice President of Physical Security for Columbia Banks, headquartered out of Tacoma, Washington. We also have on the panel Ryan Thiem. Ryan is the Corporate Investigations and Video Manager for Meijer Stores in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And finally, Rob Bush. Rob is the Technical Application Team Lead here at Genetech. He's also a former Director of Target Stores Video Services Group, and Rob's out of Minneapolis. So I'd like to welcome everybody. So I guess the first thing that we'll start off talking about is why is a SOC so important today? I think everybody is probably watching the news. We have weather going on in different parts of the country. We have obviously social unrest in different cities that's going on. There is obviously the COVID crisis that we're trying to monitor. So many different things. So let's just take it around the horn. We'll start off. Ross, can you kind of give us an overview of why is the SOC so important for Columbia Banks?
Yeah, we've just recently, probably in the last year and a half, got one started, and we have found that it's been exceptionally effective in dealing with all of the alarms, false alarms, a lot of false alarms, and incidents that are going on. We're able to react to them much faster than we were waiting for somebody to provide us that information. So having somebody there monitoring the stuff in real time allows us to respond and react in a much more targeted manner and in a quicker manner as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Ryan, how about for Meijer Stores? Why is having a SOC so important for you guys these days?
Well, I'll mirror much of the things Ross covered, but really the ability to support the business for life safety, liability, and property loss type scenarios, especially with the different things going on today, the ability to react and monitor live and in the moment to help our business respond to different threats and scenarios, and then provide high-level briefing and intelligence to leadership so the company can make good decisions on the fly.
Yeah, absolutely. The real-time aspect of it's has got to be huge for everyone. Rob, how about you? Maybe some your shed a little bit on your past experience with Target, and then what are our customers seeing today in terms of SOC?
Sure, sure. So I have experience, standing up and operating a SOC as a practitioner in my previous career. Now with Genetec, Scott and I both have the privilege of interacting with a lot of our end users in the retail, financial, and hospitality space. So I've seen a lot of security operations centers, and we interact with a lot of our customers, helping them with their security operations center. So I'll answer it from that perspective, that especially in the last few months, we've seen a lot of SOCs be more mobilized than ever, some being stood up for the first time to support buildings that may be closed. Their closing hours are longer than they have used to be. A lot of social unrest has occurred throughout, the country here. And so the SOC seems to be even more important than ever before. And it's really to provide that visibility and support where you have more eyes on what's happening and on the current situation on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's probably a good lead in to one of the first things that our audience is going to be interested in. Rob, were you part of that initial decision to build a SOC there? And maybe you could shed a little bit of the information on what factors helped get the idea started and rolling.
Sure, yeah. So from my experience, as well as helping some of our customers stand up a security operations center, it usually starts with a business case. Why do you want to do this, and what's the return and the benefit for doing that? Extending support and providing support to stores, sites, branches that may have heightened risk factors. Perhaps in retail, it's increased shrink and theft. Perhaps in financial institutions, it's the situation on the ground around security incidents. Extending the ability to provide good security from a remote location is one of the reasons that is most common. And there's some other expense saving factors, whether that is reallocating, payroll and expense, from, stores and branches to a more centralized facility, or to insource some things that may be outsourced, such as alarm centers. So, that's based on, what I've seen in some of my experiences, as well as some of ours from our customers.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things in my experience that I've seen quite a bit is, how do we help support all of those remote, site locations, be them bank branches or be them stores? How do we give that information? How do we share things with them? Ryan, is that sort of, were you part of that initial decision, and some of those factors were what helped lead to getting that started for Meijer?
Yeah, absolutely. We stood it up back in 2015, the end of when we started seeing liability shifts with EMV. So it was really initially there was a large value we needed to fill to mitigate fraud losses, chargeback dollars for Meijer. So there was lots of dollars to go after there, and we helped in the end, in the first, I'd say, year, mitigate probably about $2 million in losses. So that helped really make the business case and helped us get the money to spend to build we called it a temporary space because we're still moving into a more permanent space, but we, formalized a nice workspace for 11 workstations, and we have 2 full-time folks 24/7 now. But the value, the ROI were big parts of getting the organization to support it, and then really filling in the other values of the services and support we can provide to the organization around our asset protection technology, monitoring, property loss prevention, and other types of support. So those, a lot of similar things that helped, and we really had a real-time thing that we had to solve that kind of helped us get us stood up in the beginning.
Yeah. So it really became kind of a force multiplier for Meijer then.
Absolutely.
Out there for the field. Again, a lot of similarities and across most of retail. So Ross, how about you from the banking side? What were the first motivating factors to even consider a SOC? How did that get started for Columbia Banks?
Yeah, I actually, before we stood it up about a year prior, I had started socializing this concept with our executive team. I had been finding that a lot of our issues were occurring late at night, and it's great that I have a team that's dedicated to respond to those and will answer phones. But reality was we were missing a lot of this stuff. We were testing our systems. We had red team exercises that were going on. If we have a breach, what's the speed at which we could respond to those? And reality was we were finding that not having anybody after hours, we weren't able to respond to those within 12 hours, sometimes 48 plus hours because of a weekend or a holiday weekend. Fortunately for the banks, we get the federal holidays off. But yeah, it was one of those things where we recognized that there was a gap there, and I was socializing this concept with our executive team. What led us to actually implement it, because they were looking at cost and what the return was as we were discussing. But we had an individual in one of our areas that was blowing up ATMs, and we got hit. And the executive team came to me and says, "What do you need?" I said, "This is what I need. I need somebody to monitor this 24/7." And we stood it up immediately. Within about 2 days, I had guards on site, started training the guards. Thankfully, we already had Genetec installed, and we had a process to monitor our ATMs through the use of loitering technology and stuff like that. And we have stopped a lot of stuff since then. And so the ROI for us has been not just what we've financially returned to the business, but what we have prevented, as well as life safety incidents. So as Ryan was saying, life safety for us is almost as critical, if not more critical, than stopping the property damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Protecting the most valuable assets, which are your employees, right, and your customers. And so no, that's something that we're all dealing with right now. So it's interesting. So it kind of really leads into the next question, which is how did you build that ROI? What were the real factors? What savings were achieved? And did you leverage other departments and stakeholders to get this stood up? And Ross, you were just talking about the cost justification. We'll lead it off with you on this.
Sure. So, obviously just the personnel cost is where most of this comes in. We had the technology was already in place, so there wasn't a real cost to building that up, though we are layering some additional things on through Genetec and some other pieces that add value. But really the cost savings was, what can we eliminate? So we have third-party monitoring for our alarm systems that are going to offset a big chunk of that. We haven't eliminated them yet because we're still building it out, making sure that it's set right. I can't have robberies get missed, so we're a little bit slow to pull that trigger right now. But it's things like that. In addition, we're finding that the impact that it's having on the life safety. When I say life safety, we have, as most of you have experienced, the homeless population explosion that we're seeing everywhere. That was becoming a real problem for us. People were camping out in front of our doors, using drugs and leaving paraphernalia laying around, waste, things like that. And it was really impacting our employees. And so as we've implemented this, I've spent a significant amount of time educating our leadership team what it is that we're resolving and doing in the evening time that they're never going to be aware of. And so the ROI has been more of just the comfort level that the business has, that somebody's paying attention to this, that they're stopping a lot of stuff. We've stopped skimming incidents. We've stopped some of the ATM explosions, burglaries next door. A lot of the homeless issues, we get them, and we're not having the problem that we used to have because we're responding to those in a much more timely fashion.
Oh, absolutely. Just out of curiosity, Ross, in terms of the IT department, how involved were they, in the initial setup and getting this rolling?
Yeah, critical. I mean, I literally had one of my guys go in and become certified in networking because the process of how to get everything communicating correctly was very confusing to those that weren't adept at it. And my IT department is being stretched because there's a lot of upgrades that are going on in the business, and we're implementing a lot of digital strategy right now. So I couldn't lean on them completely, but they literally built our machines because we didn't buy DVRs offline. We built our own. We used the software from Genetech, and so they were building our DVRs, showing us how they needed to be connected, how we put in subnets and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's a critical part.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, how about you at Meijer? What did you do in terms of the ROI? How did you cost justify this upper management, and what other departments and stakeholders were involved on getting yours stood up?
Yeah, IT was definitely a big part to get the technology right, get the space right. And then, I mean, from the get-go, I'd already shared that we had mitigated about $2 million in a year. So we started, and we report out on a period by period basis what's our labor spend for the monitoring efforts, and what have we brought back to the bottom line. So we track specifically any property recoveries, and so our team does overnight remote monitoring for that's motion triggered on our high value areas in the store. We're doing less of that now because our 24-hour retail operation isn't 24 hours during the COVID experience. But so we track any interactions we have from those alarms or other situations where we help initiate a recovery incident in a store. So those dollars are tracked, and then those fraud mitigation. So we still have fraud situations, either the fraud actors calling the stores trying to get them to activate gift cards over the phone, or the groups that come in like the old short changers that try to talk about cash cards and get the newer cashiers to cash out gift cards. I mean, we probably mitigate anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 in potential losses a month in those types of scenarios. Wow. So we're tracking those dollars as dollars back, dollars not lost, that the organization doesn't have to lose. And so we pair that up against what we're spending on labor. And then we provide kind of a bullet point out on the other services that we're providing, support for our camera technology. We help IT manage the different things that camera issues can funnel into, that EAS issues can funnel into, that any of our other AP equipment that's going into the buildings with locks and keys and other stuff. We kind of monitor from a support standpoint, making sure that stuff's flowing through the funnel and anything that breaks gets fixed. And then emergency communication around critical incidents, life safety is the most important thing. So we manage our mass communication system to keep leadership attuned to those critical events occurring in our stores. So really just giving them the volume of that, how much we're saving, how much we're spending is critical to keeping us relevant and keeping the business confident that the money spent on us is well spent.
Good stuff. Rob, how about you? I know you were there at the onset of building that first investigation center, and you see our customers that are doing this now. So, how are they building the ROIs? What are you seeing out there today?
Sure. Yeah, it seems like from the ROI perspective, benefits tend to be grouped into one of three categories. There's the upfront benefits that can be claimed through cost reductions, such as consolidation of employee or guards, that can be consolidated, centralized, and more efficient. Some business cases do go after that. The insourcing of third-party alarm services is a huge one. There's a lot of cost associated with that, and we've seen that be a trend here lately, and there's pretty significant savings there. Then there's the category of savings that are as a result of your operation, the benefits that you're getting from that, some of which both Ross and Ryan have spoken about. Maybe it's loss reduction Maybe it's loss from burglaries, either that you have prevented or impacted and resolved. There's a number of things that is the purpose for the Security Operations Center to begin with. Some of those result in financials you can track, some are more qualitative. And then the last category would be like soft benefits or some of those qualitative benefits. And the ones that seem to be most successful are the ones that start to extend that benefit story into other areas of the organization. So, having your SOC and your video system be an enterprise asset for not just for security loss prevention, but for marketing, operations, and things like that. So, especially right now, we've seen that with the inability for leadership to travel as much as they had before and visit, the front lines. These SOCs are turning into these, centers that can conduct visits, so you can visit your locations, you can communicate with the people on site as if you were actually there. And so, there's the soft benefits there. There's also the cost savings for not traveling. And then things like vendor management. A lot of our customers use the SOC to, have processes and routines around vendor management. Maybe it's landscaping or, snow plowing parking lots, things like that, where, the contract says, it sets out certain expectations, and it's a quick, easy way to visually inspect are those expectations being met. So, some of those soft benefits is really focusing in outside of security and loss prevention.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned several things like the vendor management, right? So I know, we've got grocery customers out there that have direct store delivery right before the stores open in the mornings, right? And, so those are being supervised, from a merchandising standpoint, making sure that, the end cap displays or the point of purchase displays are all up and manned as much as possible. There's so many different groups now that are trying to, access and see, because like you said, the travel is really minimized now for a lot of our customers. So that kind of really brings us into a question that, I think, we probably touched on a few ways already, but we'll go back through and, how are customers using the SOCs today, right? So we talked about, different departments leveraging this, managing third-party deliveries, obviously incident responses. Bob, what are some of the other unique things that we're seeing from customers?
Yeah, so a few things that go probably beyond what we've initially spoken about are things like using it as a way to ensure safety of team members when they're traveling. Not that there's a lot of travel right now, but we've had a few customers stand up and have like a travel services area so that, and again, when they bring in, the rest of the employees at that organization, show them these services, it kind of demystifies what these are all about. If you're traveling, especially overseas, and something happens, we got your back. It's very reassuring and helps, provide a business case and justification for these. So that's certainly something that we're seeing right now as well. Oftentimes this, what we are seeing is sometimes it's used for contact tracing purposes. If there's somebody that has become ill in a site, whether it's an office building, a distribution or logistics facility, or a branch or store, there's some research and investigation work that needs to be done to see who else may have been exposed. You can do that through some data points as well as video. And so those are a couple other ways that we're seeing being used right now.
Good. So Ryan, we'll go to you. So I know a couple of these answers already, but fire away. What are some of the other unique ways that you guys are using the SOC today?
Yeah, so a variety of things. We've done a lot of different integrations with the Genetec software that have allowed us to use our ROC, our remote operation center, as we call it, to do things like people counting. So we're doing notification alarms that come to our ROC where we can, if we're getting near capacity or at capacity, we engage the store directly. And so we're working through that providing that support related to that. We also used it as kind of a command center and a virtual war room during the civil unrest to monitor incidents occurring in and around some of our facilities. We did have one gas station that was looted. So, you know, having the video up of that going on live, engaging with law enforcement in real time, and having a group of people investigating, monitoring, risk assessing different information coming in from social media feeds. The ROC was the center of that virtual war room, if you will, to drive awareness and kind of react and provide intel. You know, hey, what's the update? You know, we're doing hourly updates for senior leadership during some of the peak of that, and supporting a lot of business areas. And that means we have integrated our burg alarms for, I'd say, probably about 40 of our locations now, so we can arm remotely, disarm remotely, and then have event to action type stuff that our ROC supports taking action on if there's an alarm going off for those. We still have third-party monitoring. We're in the same boat Ross is for, hey, we're on a spot where the ROI to completely insource is there yet, but we're at the point where we can video validate in real time for many of our locations what's going on, and maybe speed up response time for law enforcement, or provide, or give the go ahead for our third-party monitoring to go ahead and dispatch police. It's mostly on the police side. For the fire stuff's pretty automatic, but so that burg integration's given us a lot of value and moving towards maybe insourcing more in the future. If we get there, it's really about updating the technology when it comes to that, and having your stores set up and with the integrations, doing more business intelligence stuff too, to learn about customer traffic. Even for our own asset protection team, we've integrated some of our EAS towers. You know, we own the greeters in the store at the store level, so hey, when we've integrated some of the EAS technology, we can pull a report on some of those alarms to see what time of day those, you know, we're seeing the most alarms, to make sure we're staffing appropriately for our greeter coverage. And the ROC helps set up and maintain that. So other things we're doing is always looking at new ways to integrate more event to action type monitoring that can bring value or solve other problems that are either causing loss or causing us to spend lots of labor. The people counting thing really was a labor play. You know, physical people counting we're spending lots of money paying extra people at, you know, 1 door or 2 doors or 3 doors in some of our retail locations to count. So that you know, we'll probably continue expanding that technology, and may outsource some of it to the stores to manage with some of the mobile platforms as far as alerts and notifications, but the ROC's been a big part of that.
Yeah, the occupancy management thing is huge, right? We've seen such a tremendous explosion of you know, just generated by the regulations that a lot of these stores, you know, different facilities face, right? And that number is constantly changing depending on what the particular, you know, level of COVID is in a given state or jurisdiction of state or city or whatever. I know here in Kansas City, you know, it's fluctuated from, you know, 10 to 25 to 50%, and, you know, just depending on what the, you know, particular level of the virus infection is, it you know, something that's constantly changing. So yeah, that's a good one to manage. Ross, how about you? Any unique things or things that from the banking standpoint that we haven't touched on with you guys yet?
Well, you know, for the most part, you know, I'll piggyback on what Rob and Ryan were saying, because we're doing a lot of the same stuff. You know, we just started testing the occupancy program. The data is still pretty thin for us, but I have been surprised at how many people are coming into our locations in places that you wouldn't expect. So for me, I'm like, it's a eye opener, but at the same time, I haven't got enough details to really take it to our leadership yet. So I got about another 30 days, and then I'll take the details up. For us, you know, we have one of the things that I talked to our executive team about is what's called a Community Reinvestment Act. So that's something financial institutions are required to reinvest a certain amount of time and finances into the communities where they're located at. So what we have done is we invested in putting cameras on the outside of our buildings, and we're utilizing that as a way to give back to the community for things that are going on that may be around our location to help solve things. So we've gotten a significant amount of requests from law enforcement for video. We had just last week, we had an individual that busted 4 windows out of one of our branches, and he walks right underneath one of our cameras. Beautiful video of him throwing the rocks through our windows and everything. Unfortunately, he did it, but we come to find out another organization reached out to us and said, hey, we had 19 businesses targeted by this guy that night. Can we get the video? Wow. So though I can't give it directly to them, I explain, you can go to law enforcement and get it, because we want to help the community. We caught some people breaking into a business next door to one of our branches. They got caught as they were coming out. We had an individual that was robbing all kinds of businesses, and there was a lot of pressure from the mayor of the city to law enforcement, and they were begging us to help them. And so we were able to give them information to solve that crime, that little mini crime wave that was going on by this individual, by tying a vehicle that he jumped in that we had video of. So we're doing a lot of that, and that's not a direct ROI, but we actually are taking that and getting credit for the work that my team is doing to the business as a whole. So it takes a lot of burden off of the business when we can say, hey, we've invested 150 hours this month back to the communities. And so it's making a big difference. And we had a car dealership across the street where some individual grabbed some rocks from our building, went over there and started throwing rocks through his cars, and he couldn't figure out what had happened. The next night, she did it again, and my team was able to identify her, and the cops picked her up that night. So, you just never know what you're going to be dealing with.
It's a crazy environment out there. Ryan, I see you nodding. So you've been getting a lot of requests to assist with law enforcement with Meijer video as well.
Yeah, we my investigations team is actually kind of integrated with our ROC, or the ROC supports kind of both ways. So my team handles a lot of those kind of higher level law enforcement requests. If there's a homicide investigation or other kind of sensitive nature investigations, either whether they show up and they want to see video at a store and there's not asset protection there, the stores know to contact our ROC, and we can do, and that's one of the services we provide. We'll allow them to, we'll remote into the store AP computer, pull up video if they need to validate something or find a armed suspect or something. For some of those critical incidents, we'll provide that level of support, or make sure they get what they need to close out a case.
Yeah. Rob, I know that obviously in your former life, sharing information with law enforcement was a huge, service that Target provided around the country. What are we seeing in terms of that with customers today?
Yeah, no, it's, I think in the law enforcement community, they, through their experience, with their local, stores or branches, they know, which organizations have video, which ones, tend to like to work with law enforcement. So, I think a lot of law enforcement, whether, it's a retailer or any place of business, knows where the cameras are, and they do ask quite a bit. We have one of our large current customers. It's a large coffee chain. I think, you could probably find the case study out on our website, but, the law enforcement knows, these stores are everywhere. There's one on every corner, it seems like. And there's also video, and good video. And so they've actually set up a nice process using one of our systems, Clearance, where law enforcement can just go online, submit a video request through Clearance, and receive that evidence, via the cloud in a secure manner. So, law enforcement is stretched thinner than ever right now, right? And it's hard to respond. It's not sometimes safe to respond either. And so help them secure the evidence they need in a safe and efficient way is certainly a huge trend we're seeing. And we're getting a lot of requests to use Clearance, and a lot of it's coming out of an operations center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good stuff. Again, I just want to remind the audience too, if you have questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to enter them into the chat webinar. And we'll take that into our next section, which is best practices. So, Rob, maybe you can share from what you've seen, your experience, some of the best practices for setting up and maintaining a SOC. Whether it's training, staffing, and are we seeing some of our customers monitor from home? They actually have folks tied into the SOC and working from their home offices.
Yeah. So no, this is a great topic, and from even personal experience, you spend all this time, effort, and energy to stand up an operations center. It's built, it's open. Now what? And so these, what's super important is routines, best practices, operational guides, so that people aren't just standing there waiting for something to happen. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done in an operations center while they are providing live support as events and communication come in. It doesn't mean that they're just sitting there waiting. We have one of our customers that has centralized their point of sale investigations into this security operations center. Not a requirement to be live. They go through all their exceptions and research POS, theft trends, and are able to farm those out as they come across them. Meanwhile, providing, the support that the organization needs. So, certainly having a process, routine, and work in place so that staff knows what to do is super important. And we have seen some virtual SOCs, be stood up here lately, where instead of being in an operations center physically, now it's extended into, people's work from home. Fortunately, the technology exists that much of that can be done, and it is. Some of them are hybrids where they might have a couple people working remotely, a couple people in there because some communication isn't going to be able to be, federated to a home necessarily, but there's, this concept of a virtual SOC, if that's a real, term, is certainly, being become very popular. All right, I think Scott froze up there. Let's kick that over to Ross. Ross, what are you seeing in terms of, training your staff and routines, and is there any monitoring from home that you're seeing in your organization?
Yeah, so remote monitoring, my full-time team absolutely can remote and do everything from home. The folks that do the SOC though do stay on premise. They're third-party guards that man that post. So they don't have the ability to remotely manage that. So they are physically on site right now. But if for some reason they weren't able to come in, my team could pick it up and do it remotely. As far as, best practices, when I think of this, I would tell anybody that's thinking about it, don't think about a SOC as it's going to be this huge organization with 20 or 30 positions that are in there with hundreds of videos, feeds, and all this stuff. You don't need all that. You might, but we didn't. We have one post. We have one position. They monitor all of our sites. We've worked very hard to try and make that as efficient and effective as possible. Integrating everything in, like Ryan was saying, by bringing in our alarm systems, our access control systems into Genetec allows somebody to manage that much more efficiently than if they're having to bounce around a bunch of different systems. And if I had multiple people, I wouldn't be getting the ROI back as I am right now. But don't understaff as well, because then you start having morale problems and people get stressed out and they don't want to be there because they're being asked to do too much. And so it's a fine balance, but everybody's going to have to find that for their own business. But don't go into it thinking that you need this huge organization, because most companies don't need that anymore.
Right. Well, good. Ryan, how about for you? What are some of your observations?
Yeah, I mean, we started out with one coverage, one body, 24/7, and that was kind of our mandate and our standard when we started off. We found enough things to keep them busy with value that we're up to double coverage. So we've got 2 bodies covering 24/7, 365. When everything closes on Christmas, which used to be the only day that Meijer business ceased operations from our retail side, we'd still have folks in there, as well as a couple of our supply chain locations. But I'll echo what Ross is saying. Yeah, you don't need 20 people to run a command center. 2 can do it for us. We have 250 retail locations, 251, 4 major supply chain complexes, a couple of global sourcing offices, and some specialty pharmacy locations spread outside of our 6-state footprint. So 2 people really can monitor. We're also a call center. We're taking calls from those stores, from our asset protection teams, managing that volume, and then managing the alarms and other critical things or threats that are happening. Really, we got to the point where 2 bodies was the right amount to help support that. And we've got a supervisor, and then my investigations team's all cross-trained to do anything our coordinators in that ops center can do. And we've actually, with some of these additional crises that are happening in 2020, we've trained some of the other parallel corporate teams that have like analysts and coordinators. We've brought them in and trained them in case we need to give my team a break, or we need to pull on additional resources due to bandwidth, because lots of things are happening at the same time. But 2 people, we can keep morale up, and we have set everyone up to work from home with a laptop. So we issued laptops very early in March when we saw some of the COVID stuff trending the wrong way and stuff started shutting down. So we wanted to make sure they could work from home, and we did for a short time work a few from home. But we were all designated critical support, essential employees. So for the most part, we've had folks working all along, and if we needed to, we could work from home though. So we wanted to have that redundancy in case either someone gets sick or in case there's other mandates that make us not essential.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm back now. I had my internet fell offline. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Again, appreciate Rob jumping in there with the question and answer. So we're getting now into the last part of the webinar. So we'll talk a little bit about what additional data or functionality would you like to add in the future. Rob, do you want to go ahead and start that off? Talk a little bit about some of the other asks that we're hearing from customers on their wish list.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest ask we're seeing right now is how to manage work, how to manage workflow. So things are coming in. What do I do? What are the steps I need to follow? How do you farm out work? So a lot of times the SOCs are kind of the quarterback of the security operation, where it may not even be work that happens in that center, but it's work that happens out in the field. And so by far, I think the biggest trend we're seeing is companies that want to get better at streamlining their work, their workflows, their work processes, and be able to manage and measure that. So we do have one applications, I'm sure some are familiar with, Mission Control. It helps standardize a lot of those operating procedures, so when something happens and it requires quick interaction, it's all laid out ahead of time. Here's what you need to do, and it provides a decision tree based on what's happening. So it certainly helps automate that. We're also working on a new application that we'll unveil later this year called Operations Center, kind of like Security Center, but it's Operations Center. That's really helping about managing work. So, what drives our roadmap is really, customer needs and what we're hearing. So, this is a big one, both in workflows and managing work. And so that's a big focus of us at Genetec right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross, how about you? What additional data points or functionality or what's on your wish list for Columbia Banks?
Yeah, like Rob was saying, I'm actually looking at the Mission Control. I think that would reduce the amount of time that it takes to train our teams that come in, because the guards do change out now and then, and training them, if you got to have a good training program, because if they're not prepared for the unexpected, it's gonna derail everything. So if we can get something and justify the mission control so that it lays out exactly what steps to take in these varying incidents that go on, that's going to be a big thing. And I think we talked about this a little bit before about expanding beyond just the security aspect, because my audit department, we get auditors on a regular basis in financial institutions. We've had some discussions about them utilizing the Genetec to virtually validate a lot of their processes that are happening in the branches, so they don't have to travel to them as much, and that's a big thing right now. As well as facilities department has talked to me about utilizing some of the plugins and stuff to monitor the systems in a building of itself. You know, the electricity usage, water usage. We've had incidents where water lines have broken and we don't know about it for, you know, until a bill comes in and you're going, wait, why did I get an $800 water bill this month, right? And so how do you start to manage some of that information and expand beyond just the security aspect? So we're really looking at that for a long-term use program.
That's interesting on the building management, because we've had customers that have tied in, you know, different types of alerts and alarms that, you know, aren't your traditional security. Like we've got one customer that's tied into refrigeration systems, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if the temperature rises above a certain level, then you know what, the SOC actually gets an alert
Right.
or an alarm on that. We had another customer that was utilizing the product to you know, make a determination of a macro that they had written if the lights had been left on, and wrote an ROI based on energy savings across a couple thousand stores. So yeah, the building management aspect's really something that we're starting to see customers dive in and get additional functionality. Ryan, how about you? What else is on your wish list?
Yeah, we've looked at a lot of those things too. Refrigeration's been one. We have that's outsourced, and it's not something that's in the AP purview now, but we've always seen value at that and alarms, figuring out how to really find one pane of glass that you can manage, monitor, operate, and, you know, react and respond to. And some of these tools that you guys have, Mission Control is one that we've been looking at too. We've really manually built out our standard operating procedures. Putting that in something that makes it a part of the monitoring and response so that it's all in one place really solves a lot of those challenges for an ops center that with training or onboarding new folks, if it's really good flow, and then just managing and be able to pull data on how you've responded, or how efficient are you, where can you find more efficiencies, because when you create a new process, there's always room to improve those processes for responding to something or monitoring something. So more improvements and solutions that help bring those different types of things like mission control or operations control kind of under one pane of glass would be definitely what I'm looking for in the future.
It's you know, I know, and this is actually one of the questions that popped up in the console. So you talked about POS a little bit earlier. Can you kind of expand on that, on how you guys use you know, POS at the Rock there, how you're monitoring and what you're doing with that?
Sure. So we have a pretty healthy store AP labor. So our POS solution is mainly kind of utilized by them, but like anything else, if our asset protection team's not in the store, or if we have some sort of fraud alert or something else, or store calls because asset protection's on the building, they have a question, we definitely have the ability to use the point of sale plugin, where ours is set up so we can monitor a transaction in real time and see as things are being scanned. So it really helps for item identification, making sure you're looking at the right transaction, or if someone's describing something to you, you can validate that you're looking at the right thing. Or if you're looking back in time at an archived transaction and paired with video, you can really make sure you're quickly and efficiently finding what you're what was described or in relation to a law enforcement request. So we use it for a variety of purposes. It's really heavily utilized by our store asset protection, but it comes in handy too when remotely you're not there at the location, making sure that it's an additional level of validation when we're remotely checking on stuff in relation to like a critical law enforcement request or a store asking a question about something that they're concerned with relating to a transaction. We can help kind of pull that up quick and provide some support.
Yeah, and one of the big trends that we see across all of retail, obviously, is self-checkout, right? There's so many more lanes, and it serves multiple purposes, including reducing the exposure of employees. So with that comes some obvious added risk, right? Of maybe folks either having a problem using it, or in the case of sometimes people not scanning all their product out. So I'm sure that's a benefit there as well.
Absolutely.
So Rob, you mentioned occupancy, and I think you also talked a little bit about something that's coming down the road that we're getting ready to release for office and space management. Can you expand out on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as both Ryan and Ross have mentioned, tracking occupancy is a very timely capability, and we have a lot of customers that are using technology to do that, to set up thresholds, to generate events to action so that they're notified of that. So it's certainly something that's kept us busy this summer, there's no doubt. One of the other applications we're working on for some of our financial customers that would apply beyond financial and certainly across any vertical is something we call Office Manager, and that is also going to help provide some visibility into how offices are being used. It can use both video data as well as access control data to understand what is office utilization. Ironically enough, we started building this application before COVID was even a thing for a couple of our financial customers. Now it seems like it's going to be even more important and more timely just to understand in this new environment and flexible work arrangements, how our office is being utilized. What is the occupancy? Do I need as much office space and desks as I had previously? So that's something we're going to be launching within a month, and so there'll be some information going out on that.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen during this entire COVID crisis is, companies have figured out more and more people can work from home, right? And so you don't really know if you need all of that office space. How much is it being utilized? So again, I think that's something that's going to get some real traction, and companies are going to look at, and it's good to know that we've got a tool that can help them make those determinations. So another one of the questions that's come in is audio communications, right? So we'll kind of go around the horn here. Ross, how do you communicate, or do you guys communicate from the SOC down to the branches, or do you communicate? What's the communication protocols that you guys are using?
We just standard phones. So when we see an incident going on, we'll just give them a call. We did install an IP speaker in one of our ATM vestibules because we had a lot of homeless that would camp in there overnight, and that was causing a lot of problems. Customers couldn't use the ATM and such. So I put together a macro, and so when they hit a bookmark, if somebody goes in there and starts setting up to camp overnight, they can hit a bookmark. It'll initiate a pre-recorded message that it's private property and they must leave and things like that. It's been incredibly effective. Yeah, we get cussed at a lot, and it's pretty amusing, but it's been one of those things where it's reduced by probably about 80% the number of times where we have to call law enforcement to have somebody asked to be moved. If you can catch them before they start shooting up heroin and things like that, that usually is pretty effective. But once they've done that, they're usually out and are no longer responding. So sometimes we do have to get law enforcement engaged, but that's been really effective. It's something that we're looking to expand further usage of, just to allow us to react to those incidences where somebody's where they shouldn't be, so that they know they're being monitored. Because if they don't think anything is being watched or anybody cares, they'll stick around, and that's when problems start to occur.
Yeah, for sure. No, the talk down thing, that's really cool. And with the recorded message on it. So it's great. Ryan, how about you? How do you guys handle audio communications?
Well, we're playing around a little bit with what Ross is talking about there. We're doing it at some of our market format stores that are more urban and have more issues with loitering as well. So we're testing a little bit of that. We have a call center software that we use for bringing in calls into us, that's kind of tied in with our support line too, so they can select us for emergency or turn in their IT issue. Or we use that to reach back out, and then we've got kind of a backup handset for each of our workstations as well, that they have an additional line they can dial out on if they need to do three-way calls or multitask. So, and then we can do three-way calls within the call center software too. So we're using that for mainly for our telecommunication with the stores and other partners.
All right. Rob, how about you? Are we seeing, or a lot of folks ask for audio, and what are some of the unique things that we're seeing from that side?
Yeah, a couple come to mind. One, a very recent one. One of our customers has done related to the occupancy package. Is they've set up thresholds for occupancy. When a store hits a certain number, say it's 50, it triggers an event to action. That action is essentially triggering through a SIP integration, a pre-recorded message on an Access audio sensor that basically announces that the building's at capacity, the customers outside must wait. So that's a unique application. We also do have a customer that's doing something very similar to Ross. They have a lot of stores in California. I think they have some issues with people setting up camp, and not in their vestibule, but kind of in the doorway or around the building, and having someone seem like they're talking to you live is a very effective way of impacting the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it lets folks know that those cameras are real and that people are looking at them. So I think one of the things that you see out there with some folks is a sense of those cameras are just up there for show, nobody's really watching them. So again, a good use case. So guys, this hour has just flown by, and so I'd like to thank first of all of our panelists. Ross Armstrong, Ryan Thiem, Rob Bors, thank you, gentlemen. Incredibly informative. I'd like to thank all of our attendees that joined. Again, just to let you know, there is going to be a recorded copy of this put up on the Genetec website. So, if you want to come back and review anything that you've seen or we've talked about today, please feel free. And on behalf of our panel and Genetec, again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.